Have you ever stopped to think about why sometimes it feels like the world insists on not cooperating with you? Why situations repeat themselves, people react the same way, and things around you simply refuse to change, no matter how hard you try to force them? What if I told you that in fact the world is just returning what you emit, like a silent reflection, waiting for you to take the first step? This is the essence of a powerful concept called the mirror principle, and no one explained it better than Alan Watts, one of the greatest modern philosophers who ever lived. If you've heard of Alan Watts, you know he had the gift of taking the deepest ideas about life and existence and translating them into simple words that touch the soul directly. And if you've never heard of him, stay with me, because what you're about to discover can truly change the way you see the world around you, and more importantly, change the relationship you have with yourself. Alan Watts used to say that life works like a mirror, and this mirror, curious and impassive, will not smile first. It waits for you to smile. It waits for you to take the initiative, for you to emit something new, for you to transform the energy you carry within yourself before trying to change what's out there. And here comes the provocation. How many times have you tried to change people's behavior, alter difficult situations, or complain about circumstances without even looking inward to realize what you were projecting onto the world? It's like walking into a room full of mirrors expecting to find happy faces, without ever realizing that your own expression is responsible for everything that's reflected back. And that's where the brilliance of this teaching lies. Because as long as we remain trapped in the illusion that others need to change, that the environment needs to be adjusted, or that circumstances need to align before we can feel good, life will continue to reflect exactly what we are carrying inside. Have you ever been through that? That situation where the more irritated or frustrated you got, the more things went wrong? Or that moment when, even without saying a word, people seem to feel your heavy energy? That's the mirror. Watts reminds us that the external reality is just an echo of what's inside us. There's no point in expecting the reflection to change if the original image remains the same. And the most interesting thing is that this principle isn't just abstract philosophy. It shows up every day, in small actions, in personal relationships, in the challenges we face. And when you understand that, you realize that the power to transform the world around you has always been in your hands, or better yet, in your mind. As you listen to me now, I want to invite you to something. If this topic resonates with you, if at some point in your life you also felt like the world was responding to you with the same energy you were carrying, share it with me in the comments. Write down below what touched you the most so far, or if you've already noticed this mirror effect happening in your routine. I read everything, truly, and knowing what you think is what makes this channel exist, because this conversation only makes sense when it's with those who feel the same restlessness. And of course, if you've enjoyed this reflection so far, give the video a like. It might seem like just a click, but believe me, it makes all the difference for this message to reach more people who, just like you and me, are seeking to better understand themselves and to see the world in a more conscious way. Oh, and if it's your first time here, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Here, we bring back the teachings of great masters like Alan Watts and turn them into honest, lighthearted conversations that shift the way we see life. Your participation is what makes this space grow, stay alive, and carry this good energy to more people who need to hear these words. And deep down, who knows, maybe help more mirrors smile first out there. If you've made it this far, truly, thank you. It's so good to know there are people on the other side of the screen willing to dive deep into reflections like this, the kind that move us in subtle ways but deep down leave that desire to see life from another angle. If this content made sense to you, if at any point in this conversation something touched you, leave this in the comments. I'm with you till the end. That way I know who stayed with me until here, and I assure you, it's exactly this kind of connection that makes it all worthwhile. If you're not yet part of this community, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here, we continue to rescue voices that have stood the test of time, timeless teachings, and truths that in some way help us live with more awareness, lightness, and purpose. And of course, if this video did you good, give it a like. It's not just about the number. It shows that this kind of message matters and helps spread these ideas to others who are also seeking this kind of transformation. And hey, there's a video right here on the side that complements this conversation really well. Click there and keep going with me because there's more good stuff for us to discover together. But the beauty of this mirror that life is, is that it's never in a hurry. It doesn't impose, it simply waits. And that, deep down, is an act of love. The universe won't force your change, because true awakening can only come from within. It simply shows again, and shows again, until something in you says, okay, now I get it. You know, there's an old story of Eastern origin that tells of a monk who, every day, would go out to meditate by the edge of a lake. One day, as he approached the water, he saw his reflection clearly disturbed. He was angry. Life at the temple was hard. His fellow monks were arguing, and the atmosphere had become heavy. And he thought, they need to change. But as he looked at his reflection, he noticed something. His expression, his eyes, his face, everything there revealed that the anger was within him, not in the others. And then he stopped, breathed, closed his eyes, and began to smile. Slowly, at first mechanically, then genuinely. And when he opened his eyes, the lake was calm. The reflection was smiling. And when he opened his eyes, the lake was calm. The reflection was smiling. This simple story reveals a profound truth. Many times we believe that our peace depends on the behavior of others, that we can only be well when the environment is ideal, when people are kinder, when the chaos ends. But like the lake, the world around us only mirrors what is inside us. The smile begins here. Serenity is born within, not outside. And perhaps the greatest trap of the mind is believing that external control is the path to transformation. It's a deception that imprisons us in expectations, makes us demand, impose, try to control. But the more we try to change the reflection without changing the image, the more frustration we accumulate. It's like yelling at the mirror expecting it to smile. The mirror doesn't respond to the shout. It responds to the gesture, to the gaze, to the silent intention. And it's not just with people. It's with situations, with experiences, with life itself. When we are anxious, everything feels urgent. When we are insecure, everything feels like a threat. When we are at peace, even chaos has a different flavor. Life is the same lake. What changes is the reflection each person sees, and the reflection always comes from the observer. Alan Watts liked to provoke. He used to say that there is no real separation between you and the universe, that this illusion of me versus the world is an invention of the mind, a conceptual game, because deep down, you are not in a universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself from a specific point of view. And if that's true, and many masters say it is, then what you experience on the outside is merely the manifestation of what vibrates on the inside. Have you ever stopped to think about that? That the repeated situations, the cycles, the encounters with people who have the same patterns, when it could all be the universe trying to show you something? Like a lesson that returns until it is understood, like a song playing on loop until you actually listen to the lyrics. And here comes something very important. This is not a philosophy to blame you. It's not about saying you attracted this so it's your fault. Not at all. It is, in fact, an invitation to self-responsibility. A call to step out of the victim role and understand that you have more power than you think. Maybe for the first time, you'll realize that you don't have to wait for everything to change in order to start living better. Maybe the first step is to change the way you look, the way you feel, the way you vibrate. And that change, no matter how small it may seem, is enough for the reflection to begin changing too. How many times have you walked into a room and felt a strange energy, even without anyone saying a word? And how many times has a simple smile of yours changed the atmosphere in a room? This is real, it happens all the time. The energy you emit shapes the experience you have. And this, when truly understood, is liberating. You don't control everything. Of course not, but you control what you carry. And what you carry influences everything. We grow up hearing that we need to make things happen, control outcomes, ensure that everything works. We're taught to act in the world as if it were an external machine that needs to be manipulated. But what if life is less of a machine and more of a living mirror? What if it's sensitive to what you feel, to what you believe, to what you truly vibrate? Imagine this. You wake up on an ordinary day. Nothing extraordinary, just a morning like so many others. But something has shifted within you. You wake up with gratitude. No specific reason. Just the fact of being alive is enough. You breathe more deeply. You walk with more presence. And for some strange reason, or maybe not so strange, things start to flow. That traffic that usually irritates you now feels like just a moment of observation. That coworker who's always in a bad mood, today looks at you differently. Or maybe it was you who looked at them differently first. And we're not talking about magic. We're talking about presence, about awareness, about changing the frequency before demanding that reality switch the channel. Alan Watts used to say that when you stop resisting life and start dancing with it, everything changes. And that dance begins with an inner step. It's not about forcing external change. It's about flowing with what is, and from that, transmuting what comes. And here I want to share something with you, something personal. In many moments of my life, I tried to control the world. I wanted people to change. I wanted things to happen in my timing. I wanted answers to come quickly. And every time that didn't happen, I got frustrated, closed off, felt like the world was against me. But it never was. The world wasn't against me. The world was simply showing me that I was against myself, that I was at war inside, trying to defeat the mirror outside. It was only when I stopped fighting that things began to flow, not because the world changed, but because I changed the way I looked at it, and suddenly the reflection smiled back. And you, have you ever felt that? Have you noticed how everything gains a different texture when you're well on the inside? How even problems seem lighter, more manageable? That's not a coincidence, that's the reflection. That's the mirror principle in action. And the more you align with it, the more you understand that you're not here to control, but to co-create. And co-creating is not about demanding. Co-creating is about listening, perceiving, adjusting your own tone so that the melody of life sounds more harmonious. Maybe you're going through a hard time right now. Maybe things aren't clear. Maybe life is challenging you more than you think you can handle. And I'm not here to give you ready-made answers. It would be disrespectful to do so. But I want to remind you, all of this, as confusing as it may seem, is mirroring something that wants to be seen, something that is asking for healing, something that finally wants to be looked at with love. And it's in that gaze that the magic happens. Because life doesn't have to be perfect to offer you beauty. You don't have to have everything figured out before you start smiling. The reflection doesn't need to change first. The smile, as always, begins with you. It's curious to notice that the greatest transformations often come from almost invisible gestures. A silent choice, a thought interrupted, an impulse you decide not to follow. It's not the big events that shape our vibration, but the way we deal with the small ones. And that's where many people get it wrong. They keep waiting for the big awakening, the extraordinary moment, the epiphany that will change everything. But the truth is, life's mirror responds to your micro decisions. The way you get out of bed, the way you treat the people you live with, the time you take to take a deep breath before reacting with anger, the choice between judging or understanding, the time you devote to getting to know yourself, even if no one sees it. It's in those small actions that the frequency shifts, and reality, like a sensitive mirror, starts to return new images. I remember one afternoon when everything seemed to go wrong. Mistakes at work, conflicts at home, a mental chaos that felt endless. All I wanted was to scream, to blame, to run away. But something, maybe the memory of teachings like those of Alan Watts, made me stop. I sat in silence, closed my eyes, and just observed what was happening inside. Without trying to fix it, without trying to understand everything, just watching. It was uncomfortable. But it was also liberating, because in that moment I realized I was trying to force life to obey me, when in fact it just wanted to be heard. The mirror wasn't attacking me, it was simply reflecting my own internal turmoil. And when I recognized that, not in a rational way but with presence, everything slowed down. The chaos didn't disappear, but the way I walked through it changed, and that made all the difference. Have you ever stopped to notice how life gives back exactly what you offer, even without words? Have you noticed that people who are always complaining always find more reasons to complain? And those who are grateful and even in hard times somehow seem to find beauty even among the thorns? It's not magic, it's vibration, it's resonance. It's the same old mirror, responding to the frequency within you. Alan Watts used to say that life is like a dance. You don't dance to get somewhere. You dance because you are dancing. The meaning is in the moment, not in the goal. And as long as we keep waiting for everything to fall into place before we start living, we'll just watch life pass us by through the window. But if, even with fear, you take a step, if even without all the answers, you allow yourself to be present, the dance begins, and the mirror begins to smile. There's a moment in the journey of every conscious person when They stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" This simple shift in the question marks the beginning of a silent awakening, a turning point within that isn't always immediately noticed, but it changes everything. Because when you replace victimhood with observation, you shift the frequency, and everything shifts with it. Alan Watts said that consciousness is like water. It takes the shape of the container. If you fill a glass with water, it takes the shape of the glass. If it spills on the floor, it spreads. The human mind is the same. It takes the shape of the ideas you feed it. If you live believing you're small, unlucky, not enough, or stuck, then consciousness pours itself into those beliefs. But if you begin to look at yourself with curiosity, with respect, with honesty, then consciousness expands, and the world changes with it. The change you've been waiting for on the outside might be trapped in an old thought, in an unconscious pattern, in a fear you've been avoiding. And as long as that internal content isn't acknowledged, it will continue reflecting itself, like a mirror, in your relationships, in repeated failures, in conflicts that seem to follow you wherever you go. But when you're willing to truly see, something magical happens. You see yourself. And when you see yourself, not the ego, not the mask, but the deep being, the reflection begins to return something new. It's as if the mirror says, "Now, yes, now you remembered who you are." And the most beautiful part of all this is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't need to become an enlightened being to experience this transformation. You just need to be willing. Willing to look, willing to feel, willing to stop running from yourself. Have you noticed that life always delivers the next challenge at the exact moment you're ready to face it? It may seem like coincidence, it may seem harsh sometimes, but maybe, just maybe, there is no punishment, only invitation. An invitation to a deeper level of presence, to a more real version of who you are. And in that place, you begin to understand that you are not separate from life. You are not a displaced piece waiting to fit in. You are the puzzle itself, the reflection itself, the mirror itself. You are the observer and the observed. And this understanding, as subtle as it may seem, begins to dissolve a silent anxiety that lives in so many people. The anxiety of needing to prove, to justify, to achieve something out there in order to feel good in here. But what if you are already enough right now? What if the reflection is just waiting for you to say, "I see myself"? Have you ever felt that time flows differently when you are fully present? Those rare moments when you're not stuck in the past or anxious about the future. You're just there, whole, present, feeling the now with all your senses. It's curious how in those moments the world seems more alive, the colors more intense, the sounds clearer, the people more real, you more you. It's as if life were waiting for exactly that, for you to return to the now. Alan Watts used to say that the past is an illusion, not because it didn't happen, but because it only exists as memory. The future is also an illusion, not because it won't arrive, but because it's not here yet. The only real, tangible, living moment is now, and it's precisely in the now that the mirror reveals itself most clearly. Everything you feel, think, and believe now is being reflected. You can tell yourself that you're calm, but if you're carrying inner turmoil, the world will feel it. You can smile at others, but if your heart is closed, the reflection doesn't lie. And the opposite is also true. You can be silent, at peace, and the people around you start to feel better just from your presence. They don't even know why, but they feel it, because your energy speaks before your words, and energy cannot be faked. Vibration cannot be disguised. Life's mirror doesn't respond to what you want to appear. It responds to what you are. And that's why true transformation is never about achieving more. It's about shedding everything that is not you. It's about coming home, returning to your essence, returning to the simplicity of being. You know that restlessness that lives inside us? That voice that says you need to run, do, change, prove? That voice comes from fear. The fear of not being enough, of not being seen, of not being loved. But true love, the kind that transforms the reflection, begins when you see yourself, when you embrace yourself, when you say, "Even with everything I carry, I choose to be with myself." And there's no shortcut for this. It's a path walked with courage, with presence, with silence. Because in the end, the loudest noise that exists is the noise of a mind that won't stop. And the greatest power you can achieve is the ability to silence it, even if just for a few moments. It is in those moments that the mirror clears. It is in those spaces of stillness that the reflection changes. And sometimes all life is waiting for is this: that you stop, that you breathe, that you return to yourself. There comes a moment on this journey, and maybe you felt it, when the world stops looking like a battlefield and starts to look like a garden. Life, once gray, begins to show colors that were always there, but that your eyes didn't see, not because they didn't exist, but because you weren't present enough to perceive them. That moment arrives when you truly begin to understand that everything happening outside is merely an invitation to return inside. Remember that situation that hurt you? The loss, the betrayal, the injustice? You spent days, maybe months, trying to understand why it happened, looking for someone to blame, replaying every detail. But deep down, nothing truly changed until the moment you looked at yourself with compassion, when instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" you asked, "What does this show me about my unhealed wounds?" That is the real turning point. When pain stops being punishment and becomes a mirror. When suffering stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. Alan Watts used to say that life is like a piece of music, and the problem is that we spend too much time trying to get to the last note. But no one listens to music just for the ending. You listen for the journey, for the rhythm, for the pauses, for the beauty of each sound in the moment it happens. That's how living works too. When you understand this, you realize you no longer need to run. You no longer need to control everything. You can simply dance with life instead of fighting against it. And suddenly, the world changes. People react differently. Things flow, not because the world changed, but because you changed, and the mirror responded. Remember those mornings when you woke up feeling heavy, unmotivated, and everything went wrong? Now compare that with the day you chose to smile for no reason, when you chose to take a deep breath, to be grateful, to walk lightly. Did people treat you better? Were the encounters more pleasant? Did chance seem to be on your side? It wasn't a coincidence. It was alignment. The truth is simple. The world smiles when you smile with your soul. Not a forced social smile, but the one that comes from within. The one born from silence, from self-compassion, from the peace you cultivated alone. And you know what's most beautiful about that? You don't need to wait for anything else to begin. You don't need things to get better, for someone to apologize, or for a miracle to happen. You just need to decide. Decide that, from now on, you will act as if you are already at peace, as if you are already whole, as if the mirror is already smiling, because it is. And if you've made it this far in this conversation, I invite you, close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and imagine yourself in front of a mirror, but not an ordinary mirror, a mirror of the soul. And as you look into it, don't criticize yourself. Don't point out flaws. Just see who you really are. See everything you've faced, everything you've survived, everything you've learned, and say to that reflection, "I am here, and it's all okay." That is the moment the mirror smiles back. And I know this isn't easy, but I also know it doesn't have to be lonely. That's why, if this conversation touched something inside, something you maybe didn't even know was asleep, and tell me, write in the comments, "I choose to change the reflection." That way, I'll know you stayed with me until the end, that this message found an open heart on the other side of the screen, and that this journey, which began with words, turned into a step on your own path. And of course, if this made sense to you, if somehow this conversation lit a spark on your path, leave a like. It might seem like just a button, but it's that gesture that tells the algorithm and the universe that more people need to hear this, that more mirrors need a smile first. And if you're not part of this community yet, this is the moment. Subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't look for ready-made answers. We look for better questions. We rescue the ideas of masters like Alan Watts and turn them into bridges inward. Bridges between what you live and what you feel you could become. Life is short, but consciousness is infinite. And every time you choose to see yourself with honesty, you're helping to change the world. Not with speeches, but with vibration, with presence, with truth. And to close, I invite you to continue this journey. There's a video right here that connects with everything we've talked about. Click on it and come with me. Because the path of self-knowledge is long, but it becomes lighter when walked together. And remember, the mirror never smiles first, but when you truly smile, it smiles back.